Hi, Chris Challett's here at the ecommotors Day at eBay's HQ in Richmond with Neil from the IAAF.
Indeed.
So, Neil, that's a mouthful of an acronym. What does it stand for and what do you do?
So I'm Technical Director of the Independent Automotive Aftermarket Federation, the IAAF, and we represent the independent aftermarket and many of its key players, parts distributors, parts manufacturers, equipment suppliers, and even now a lot of independent workshops as well.
So these are the people that aftermarket, that's a term not everyone's familiar with, but these are the parts that you buy for your car that aren't necessarily from the original manufacturer.
Indeed. So this gives consumer choice. So a choice of parts, a choice of pricing, maybe a choice of the way the vehicle's repaired, and maybe in some cases the part is repaired as opposed to replaced. It's all about consumer choice.
So I think there's two kind of categories of parts I buy for my cars. One of the sort of nice to have styling features, and the other are the kind of the essential features, like a couple of weeks ago I had to have my brakes done. It was new brake pads and one of the brake hoses let go, so it's a new brake hose as well. Why are you worried about the aftermarket parts industry compared to the vehicle manufacturers? What's going on that you're concerned about?
I think there's several things. The vehicle manufacturers have entered the aftermarket because they see that as a business extension. So they sell a vehicle, but they want to sell services. And included in that is the repair and maintenance and diagnostics that may be associated with that. So the type of tool you use, the access to that vehicle and its data, and from that the ability to decide what part, whether it's repaired or replaced, and in some cases the choice of those parts, because a lot of the aftermarket parts are not only made to the same specification, may actually exceed the specification of the original parts. So an upgrade to your brakes, for example, is quite often done with an aftermarket part, because it's all about price of manufacturing the vehicle and equally the price of the replacement parts.
So my next door neighbour, he's just bought alloy wheels for his vehicle. It's quite an easy part, you just unscrew some bolts and screw them on. Not every part is quite that easy though. Why is it that the aftermarket suppliers are finding it more and more difficult to compete? Because can't they just bolt their parts to the car anyway?
Yes, but they may not work, which may sound strange. Physically they may fit, but there is often a software element, and from that perhaps an embedded code is required or some form of activation to allow it to be integrated and function. And the vehicle manufacturers would prefer that their part with their coding are the only ones that can be fitted and ultimately work.
So I suppose going down to the very basics of my brakes, in the old days I just had brakes on my car, but nowadays I have a brake wear sensor that tells me when it's worn, and I guess it's that wear sensor that it's starting to be a bit more software-ish than just bolt on part.
It's a cascade from that, Chris. So the sensor will indicate that something needs replacing before it becomes too critical. But in doing that, if the vehicle manufacturers have access to a vehicle remotely, what's known as wide area networks, mobile phone networks, they can offer services and a quotation in the car.
So this is all the time that rather than going to the garage saying there's something wrong where they plug a computer in and find out this is the car when it flashes up with a message. Sometimes it's just, on my old car, it's just service needed because it's hit a service interval, but sometimes it can be much more specific than that.
Yes.
It tells me what's wrong with it and where to go to get it fixed.
Yep.
And that's going to be the vehicle manufacturer themselves.
And that's the distortion of the market.
So, excuse me, what can we do about this? Because I've always gone to an independent garage. If my car's now going to tell me, oh no, you've got to go to the vehicle manufacturer for repairs, what can I as a consumer do about this, and what can the entire industry do about this?
Well, let's take that from the last part. The entire industry is supported by legislation. And we, as the IAAF, are very much in touch and working with the government. And following Brexit, the government has a lot of legislation to revise, but they need to get up to speed with what's also happening in Europe, where a lot of these things are much better understood because because of the depth of knowledge and experience that people like the Commission have got. So the UK government is very willing, but obviously we want to help them to understand these issues. The Competition and Markets Authority, because ultimately this is a competition issue, they are very much involved and understand a lot of these critical issues. And from the consumer's viewpoint, we need to ensure that they have the choice. And the choice is threatened because we're now in a competition with the vehicle manufacturers, who obviously have their own business models and agendas. So it's a sort of a, how do we square that circle? But the IAAF are very much involved to try and make sure that in the future we can continue to offer competitive choices, a level playing field, and non-discrimination, as the legislation says. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I've just got one more question, which is for all those car enthusiasts out there. You talked about upgrading your brakes, but when you put bigger wheels on, it allows you to put bigger brake discs on, maybe vented discs and bigger pads and better stopping power and all sorts of other upgrades you can do. Changing, I mean, a common one, I don't actually know the point of this one, but a common one is air filters. They'll put a different air filter on. Are you telling me that I won't be able to do this to my car in the future if there's a computer inside that doesn't recognise the parts?
Maybe. The air filter is all about less restriction, but it's a minor issue. In terms of brakes, they are critical safety issue,
Of course.
for obvious reasons. But equally, if you buy a performance version of some vehicle manufacturers, you can upgrade the brakes. And the somewhat ironic position here is that to do that, they're buying from, it's a tier 1 supplier, but it's a very big aftermarket supplier who will supply their aftermarket version because it's more expensive than the OEM version, which is why it's an upgrade. But of course you have to be at least semi-knowledgeable to make sure that you do keep this all in balance, shall we say, in relation to the way the car then operates. It's more than just putting bigger wheels on. It's a relationship to all the other components around the wheels, which are suspension related, steering related, and just putting bigger brake discs or pads or something on there isn't necessarily the best way to go.
Yeah.
You need some good advice if you're not aware.
People that tinker with their cars a lot, they like doing upgrades.
They tend to be the enthusiasts. So.
And I think that they're going to want to carry on doing this. But more importantly, I think as a consumer, I still want to carry on having the option of an independent garage that I can go to for often lower labour charges, but also they'll source parts from different venues other than just the vehicle manufacturer, because often they can be a better price. Often they're identical. I've got a Jaguar, often they put Ford parts on because they're effectively the same but cheaper. So for those people that are concerned, who should be getting in touch with the IAAF and what do you want for them? Should it be the aftermarket suppliers? Do you want to hear from consumers? Who do you want to hear from? Who can help you lobby? Where do you want to gather your evidence from?
Ultimately, we're an association that supports our members who are businesses. We're not a consumer association. But ultimately, it's the consumer choice which we're protecting. So there is a direct link. The answer to your question is that for us to support companies, they would need to be members. There are many members, and we're widening the scope to include, shall we say, a true representation of the aftermarket. The IAAF, if you type that into Google, will probably come up with the International Athletics Federation. So if you type independent Autobut before you get to the end of the word automotive, you will see the IAAF. We're based in Birmingham. It's very obvious when you find our website. There's a lot of information about who we are, what we do, our lobbying activities, and so on. But we are very open to anyone in the aftermarket because that's who we represent. And we welcome members, and we try and reflect that we understand their needs, and we ensure that in the generic activities we have, that their element of the aftermarket is also discussed and represented. Although we obviously don't discuss individual company agendas. So we also have on our website, under the lobbying, across the landing page, under lobbying, there's a Survey Monkey link, and Survey Monkey gives you a portal where you can enter information about a particular vehicle and a problem where a garage or an independent operator, a repair workshop, etc., can enter details where they think they should have been able to do the job, and for some reason the vehicle manufacturer was non-compliant or blocking, not providing parts, whatever it may be. And we can collate that information, take it to the Competition and Markets Authority and raise it to ensure that that's something we can address.
So if you're in the aftermarket part, look up the IAAF and encourage you to join. But on behalf of all the consumers out there, all of the car drivers that like tinker in their cars, I'd like to thank you for the work you're doing, because we all want to carry on being able to service our cars either ourselves or with local garages as and when we want. So thank you, Neil.
Thank you very much.